वाले लिंक की क्लिक करना है। Start है।
I know, but the slide is not coming.
Check.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I think this is working. And we'll start in. So those of you watching online, we'll be starting in 2 minutes. Thank you. All right, we'll be starting soon. So, just those of you online, just so you know, before I start, we're running Engaging with 1984 workshops here, sponsored by the Glenrock Gurdwara in New Jersey. And we have some live audience here. We're running multiple workshops, and also online, we're doing this webinar on justice ideas. The language of this mostly will be English. But those we can take question answers in Punjabi or English around 1 o'clock. For about 55 minutes, I'll speak, and then that's the format, and then we'll take question answers. So those of you who have questions here, who are sitting here in the facility in Glenrock area, make sure you are ready with your questions, and you have to speak aloud so we can capture the question. If not, I'll just repeat the question. Thank you. Okay, so we'll start now. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So this webinar today is obviously, you know, in the Sikh world, everyone's talking about 1984. This is the 30th anniversary, and we're supposed to be talking about it from the streets of Delhi and Amritsar to all the way in New York and Vancouver areas. And there are a few questions we want to raise today. And the theme of this webinar is justice. ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿਆਂ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਇਨਸਾਫ. And what we want to do today is, instead of doing a factual sort of explanation of what happened in 84, I want to build on what was really 84 about in terms of justice. Because everyone in the media, in the gurdwaras, in the conversations at home, they're focusing on kisi nya lena, insaf lena. If you look at the picture, that's the one you will see mostly even when they're coming in media. And I'm not going to get too much into which pictures we should be showing. But it seems to be that at least पिछले 5-10 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ the focus has shifted to we want justice. So there are campaigns being run, there are videos being made, there are workshops being done, there's a documentation being done. So what is this justice? That's what I want to talk about. The overview ਇੱਥੇ ਲਿਖਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ justice ਕੀ ਹੈ? So everyone has their own idea of justice. If you watch from a Judeo-Christian heritage, justice is all about revenge. Most of the time, when you look at it from what they end up doing to get justice. Is that the only forum for us? So Guru Granth Sahib de vich, what is justice? That's what I want to focus on. Then I want to focus on, in history, what did justice mean to us? Because we have almost 550 years of history. These kind of things have happened before as well. What did they do? Did they wait 30 years to get justice? Or were they doing other things to get justice? Or whether even in 84, when it comes to 84, it will be the second half of the conversation. 84 bhi jab hoya, is this the right word for us to use today? Again, I'm just giving one perspective. I'm not saying everyone should think like this, but I do want to look at it because we know as Sikhs, we say we have agreement only on Guru Granth Sahib. And Guru Granth Sahib is the least understood thing for us, even in terms of justice. So what is the idea of justice in Gurbani? How was this justice achieved historically? And in context of 84, what is achieving justice means today? Or whether even is this even our end goal? Because today it seems like that has become the end goal. Nya lena, ya insaf lena. Is this the end goal? So let's start with this. Now, you probably have seen these phrases which I put up there, which are talking about, this. We said, is this our predicament? We will use these phrases. Again, these phrases are great. They're said by one of the greatest individuals on the history of the world. But I want to evaluate those from a Sikh perspective again. Justice delayed is justice denied. We use these slogans as well. We'll say justice is not delivered, or there is no closure. 84 da koi closure hi nahi hoya aaj tak. How can we move on? And then the other thing is, let's move on. Are these even the right questions or the right predicaments for us? That's what I want to explore. They make sense. I value them. But from the thought of Guru Granth Sahib, is this where we should be stuck? Or should we be moving to look at things from a Sikh paradigm, the paradigms available to us in Guru Granth Sahib? So let's explore the word justice. Kyunki Angrezi da ye word Guru Granth Sahib which even the word insaf doesn't show up. The word comes as nyao. And now you can see different meanings written, but there is at least two understandings of that word in Guru Granth Sahib. As a noun, it means there is some fairness in the way you treat people. ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਡੀਲ ਕਰਨਾ, ਉਹ ਫੇਅਰਨੈਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਵੇ। ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਨਿਆਂ ਕਰਨਾ, ਜੇ ਕਈ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਦੇ ਜੀ ਹੈਗੇ, how do we do justice in community when two parties, for example, in Glenrock Gurdwara don't get along? Then how do you do justice to each other? That could be a question. And same can be applied to 84. Then how do you do justice not just to the survivors, but also to the defenders, to the non-Sikhs, to the Sikhs? We have to talk about all those things. So some element of how you treat people in a fair manner. And generally, ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿ ਵੀ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ fair and just manner. ਦੂਸਰਾ ਇਹਦੇ ਚ ਹੁੰਦਾ evaluate and correct individuals. ਇੱਥੇ ਤਾਂ, and this is something I'll get into the 84 context, but are we even evaluating? What level is our evaluation at regarding 84? And then how do you correct those individuals? Sikhan di ਇਹਦੀ vocabulary ਸੀਗੀ, and I'll come into that a little later, but we don't even talk about corrections. At best, we are maybe looking at some figureheads and saying they need to be imprisoned or they need to be tried, right? But remember, again, justice has nyao, and I'll get into the Gurbani of it very quickly, ki nya karan wala kaun a, te nya lein wala kaun a, nya den wala kaun a. All these questions come into play, but at minimum, justice de do angle. One is how you treat, the other is how you correct. And I want to talk about both elements. So there are long phrases from Guru Granth Sahib written there, you can see them. But you know, when we talk about the divine, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਇੱਕੋ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ vocabulary ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕੋ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ, again, why is ਇੱਕੋ ਓੰਕਾਰ important? Everything for us comes from ਇੱਕੋ ਓੰਕਾਰ. The way we behave, the way we look at the world, the way we look at anything in life comes from ਇੱਕੋ ਓੰਕਾਰ, because we are supposed to become ਇੱਕੋ ਓੰਕਾਰ. And for ਇੱਕੋ ਓੰਕਾਰ it says, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੋ ਕਿ ਉਹਦਾ ਤਖਤ ਵੀ ਸੱਚਾ ਤੇ ਉਹਦਾ ਨਿਆਂ ਵੀ ਸੱਚਾ. And the such in Guru Granth Sahib is not just truth. Truth is the interpretation. Truth ਤਾਂ ਬੜੇ ਲੋਕੀ ਲੱਭ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ, ਗਾਂਧੀ ਵੀ ਲੱਭਦਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ. That's why he probably wrote my experiments with truth. So what is such? Such is something which is permanent. Such is, Professor ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਦੋਂ ਦੀ ਵਿਆਖਿਆ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਲਿਖਦੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹਰ ਵੇਲੇ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਸਦਾ ਸਥਿਰ ਰਹਿਣ ਵਾਲਾ. What we will say in, you know, in the problems of translations are there, but we would call it something which is permanent, something which doesn't change according to the mood or according to the politics or according to where the wind is blowing. ਜਿਹੜੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਸਦਾ ਸਥਿਰ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਆ ਸੱਚ. So ਨਿਆਂ is also such. ਨਿਆਂ is something regardless of who's doing it, again building it from this angle, regardless of who the individual is, what the political party is, what the circumstance is, the answer will be the same. So Sikhs ਲਈ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਚੁਣੌਤੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਹਿੰਦੁਸਤਾਨ ਦੀ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਲਈ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਚੁਣੌਤੀ ਹੈ. We have to look at it from both angles. Are we looking at only the circumstances, or are we looking at something which needs to be regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the political parties, regardless of how many Sikhs are killed or how they are killed? All those things come into play. And this is one of the ideas of Ikko Onkar and Guru Granth Sahib. The other is, we actually don't differentiate Vaheguru's operation or Vaheguru's behavior. ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਦੀ vocabulary ਚ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ modus operandi ਕੀ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ. We don't differentiate that from spirituality. And that's the second phrase of the Gurbani lines ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਲਿਖੀਆਂ ਨੇ. In the same statement or in the same shabad, we are saying ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਵਡਿਆਈ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ, how we glorify the divine. In the same shabad, we are talking about ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨਿਆਂ ਵੀ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਲੈਣਾ. ਨਿਆਂ ਹੈ ਧਰਮ ਦਾ. So why am I invoking this? This is where world has tough time understanding who we are. And Sikhs now are also having tough time understanding who we are, because we are not able to look at religiosity and justice in the same line, at the same time. So being religious meant, according to this, being religious meant that you're ready to take or deliver or do justice. Ajkal ਅਸੀਂ ਅਲੱਗ-ਅਲੱਗ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ. ਹੁਣ ਰੱਬ ਦੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਨੇ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਦੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਨੇ. ਹੁਣ we are supposed to be like Vaheguru. I mean, you guys already know this. Those of you watching, you also know this, that the Vaheguru we believe in is the one we want to become, not the one we want to worship. Harjan aisa chahiye, jaisa har hi hoye. The devotee of divine is just like the divine. Which means if Vaheguru is like this, really we are supposed to become like this. So what we talk, jiਵੇਂ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ vocabulary ਹੈ, the way we present issues, the way we talk about justice in this concept, in this principle or context today, has to be exactly the same. Permanent ideas, regardless of the circumstances, and we are able to do this as part of our spirituality. It is not different from our spirituality, because this is the divine in Gurbani. So with this, let's look at the lives of 10 gurus. It's kind of hard to see that on a slide, but my point here is that gurus were actually not just spiritual beings, they were active agents of justice. 239 years of training, they did a lot of trainings, but aaj the topic justice aega. 239 years of training on how do you work as an agent of justice. They also did it in extraneous circumstances. I mean, Guru Arjan was being very spiritual, but still General Sulhi Khan was deputed by Jahangir to go kill him, assassinate him. And Guru Arjan deals with that. He writes about it. When the way Guru Har Gobind is dealing with Jahangir, one of the greatest Mughal emperors, as they say, how is he dealing with somebody who assassinated not just your father, but also tortured him to death in today's vocabulary, right? This is what the world is facing. There are tortures everywhere. So somebody who did that to your father, who also happens to be the uncontested leader of the Sikh nation at the time. We called him Guru Arjan Sahib. Sahib is a political word. Sahib is not a religious word. Sahib is the one you take orders from. Sahib is the one who is a sovereign. So he was in parallel to Guru Arjan. And Guru Hargobind is showing how do you deal with that. How he is willing to go to jail to go fight for that issue. Guru Nanak is willing to go to jail to make sure there's a justice for average person when the genocide is going on. So point here is there are active agents, they are having battles, they're having what Amnesty International today will call, they are becoming prisoners of conscience, which is what Guru Nanak was. They are political prisoners, which is what Guru Hargobind was. Diwali is not as simple as we have made it, and I don't want to get into the issues of the dates. We know our history has been revised, but even in ideas we are changing it. Guru Hargobind Sahib was a political prisoner. And he said, it's not enough that you release me from the jail. He says, I want to take every political prisoner out of here. This is major stuff. This is what is happening in Iran, what is happening in India, and even what is happening to some extent in America is being talked about. And people don't know how to deal with this. Our Guru is dealing with this. He's saying this is how you become an active agent of justice. In fact, today's Hukum from Darbar Sahib was about this too. It was basically talking about Guru Arjan Sahib and SikhRI was saying, if you still have distresses in life, they exist because you have not identified with the one. जो साड़ी भी problem चल रही है ना 84 वारे भी या और चीज़ें भी because we don't live in relationship with the divine and our distresses continues and maybe the distresses are wrongly founded too and that's what I want to discuss. Point here is the idea of justice was carried out by every guru in their personal and panthic capacities, in their personal capacity as a Sikh, as well as their leadership capacities, which would be a panthic capacity. Every single one did it, and they paid dearly for it. Their families were against them, state was against them, establishment was against them. Some of them were imprisoned, some of them were tortured, some of them were part of assassination attempts, and 2 of them were, we call them martyred to that, but they were basically political assassinations. Guru Arjan was Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj, it was a political assassination attempt. Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib was a political assassination. In today's political vocabulary, that's what we'll call it. Aapa shaheed कहने हैं, ते aapa उन्होंने martyr कहने हैं. But karan ki si, none of them are what we call spiritual reasons. They're all very political reasons. Every guru, because they were active agents of justice. Anyone who is trying to create permanence and anyone who is correcting the action of the state. Remember justice, there is a permanence in the idea and there's a correction in what the policy is. This is how you become an active agent of justice. And gurus did it, and they did it from different levels. Now, you know, there is a gender inequality or injustice the world is talking about, social level, political, economic, and religious. And the point is that gurus were doing this in all these areas. So far, what I was trying to say was, the idea of justice in Gurbani is very, very clear. And it is born out of Ikko Onkar. And gurus became like Ikko Onkar because they had the qualities of Ikko Onkar. This is why gurus were also active agents of justice. And then how did the Sikhs do this? Let's talk about that. Banda Singh Bahadur, even when what is justice in equity or economic theories? He's talking about it. He's saying this is not something we're going to talk in our gurdwaras. He makes it a state policy. And in his state policies, when he talks about how do you treat people of other religion, how do you deal with the land issues, how do you deal with the reformations of abolishment of the landlordships, because it was sort of like what Europe was also going through. Point here is, the Sikhs of the Guru also understood this. Now we might have a question here, which Sikhs? The ones we are talking about. We're not going to talk about every Sikh. But the Sikhs who understood this, and Banda Singh Bahadur is a prime example, he did not just go to Sarhand to demolish it. He replaced it with Mukhlispur and Logar, where he had particular economic and political policies. And when he is even demolishing Sarhand or Samana and other places, he's replacing the leaders, and the leaders are not all Sikhs. In fact, in most cases, they're Muslims, because he said they need to be the representatives of the people. So the idea of justice, of permanence, and corrective actions, you see in the lives of how Khalsa Raj was established. But let's come to June and November 84 very quickly. And this is the background to set that up, the idea of justice. So what happened really in June? We had this conversation here when we were talking earlier, but here is what you basically know. You know it was a Shahidi Gurpurab of Guru Arjan Sahib. We know that Punjab was sealed. When do you seal a whole state? When do you, sealing means no reporter allowed, nobody's coming in and out. Why does state do that? You have to think about that. We are confused about other things. And then we know chemical gas, tanks, and other warfare. In fact, if you have to put a number, basically from Chandi Mandir, which is the Western Command of Indian Army, they had 70,000 people involved there from the operational theater and about 80,000 people on the ground. Why does the government use 150,000 people on a day which is a Gurpurab day and seal the borders of Punjab? Who has things to hide is the question. Bhindranwale didn't have anything to hide. He was operating openly. But this is what government did. And I want to bring Bhindranwale into it because he's central to what happened in June 84. But this is the kind of stuff we want to think about. What was really going on? It was war on all its citizens. If you want to look at it from their perspective. People in India at the time are also citizens of India. This is why the guy who did the whole planning, Lieutenant General S.K. Sinha, he says, I'm not going to implement this because I have taken oath not to kill my own citizens. And he says, this is a political problem. We need to solve it politically. So it is very clear what is being done in June 84. The documentation, I'm not even going to talk about it. It's very well documented. I'm just mentioning this is roughly what happened in June. This is all of Punjab. We know multiple Gurdwaras were attacked. We know Punjab was sealed. Reporters weren't allowed, things of that nature. So who has things to hide? The state of India, not the Sikhs. November 84, we also know, it's very well documented. You know, Indian media still keeps saying riots. And this is something we really have to think about. Why is it that they continue to, even in their best of intentions, keep calling it riot? When it is very well established, the very first report came out in November 84 itself. That report was put out. I think they did a press conference on November 4th, between 4th, 5th, and 6th, I am mistaken. But my point is, in November 84, who are the guilty? The so-called the Black Book was out by Rajni Kothari and Govinde Muktoy from PUDL, and they named the people who are involved in doing this. They named the politician, they named how it was done. It was state, organized, police complicit, everyone failed us. It is what we were talking about earlier. So they're not just saying that how the bureaucracy failed, the police failed, the political administration failed, the media failed. They're saying here are the ones who led this. They gave a list of those guys in November 84 itself. 2 professors from Delhi, from 2 organizations, and they put out the report. आप आज भी कहने जी documentation नहीं हुई November 84 दी हुई है. The very documentation came out within a week. That's my point. And also बड़ा clear हैगा, you know, people, Justice SikhRI put out his report, and he used the word it was a deliberate action, which was a genocidal campaign essentially. So we know this already, right? That's why I don't want to spend too much time on these 2 things. So what do we need to know? Sada predicament. I want to go back to 18th century to answer some of the questions. You know, similar things happened before too. Did we ask Zakaria Khan that we are going to petition you? And that's something I want to talk about. When it happened in 18th century, half of the Sikh forces killed, but they also created people who are going to go fight Zakaria Khan, right? There was a price on every Sikh head. You guys have heard this, at least in anecdotal style. You know, Sikhan de Sirane bol hunde si, aapa suni da hai. Actually, it was more detailed. There was a particular reward you got if you brought a head. You got a different level of reward if you bought the whole body. If you got a different level of reward if you bought it on a particular instrument, for example, how raw it was. So actual bounty senior. Even in that time, what was the reason? Remember the question of why? The access to what we generally call Golden Temple Complex or Harmandir Sahib, sade phrase hai. Harmandir Sahib complex jada haiga, the access allow nahi kar rahi si sarkar. And they said anyone who's going to go there, that's what we're going to do. Very similar things happened with Baba Deep Singh. Very similar things started to happen in '84. But then we had people who responded to it. People responded to it in a different way. We had the dals which were created, and look at what was the idea of dal. We need a methodology and organization to counter what the state is doing. Again, they were not too many people doing it. They were not that they had the most sophisticated weaponry or sophisticated styles, but they had spirit and they used the Sikh spirit, the ideas of Gurbani. It is in this period where Ganda Singh actually has written. He says, they did only two things. They prepared on how to fight the state, and whenever they had time, they would sit down and read Guru Granth Sahib. Because their idea of justice was coming out of Guru Granth Sahib. And their fight, that's why we can we're very proud to talk about 18th century, that how they fought with these guys. Ganda Singh, in fact, wrote that Sikhs were so desperate at the time for learning that if they did not find a Sikh who was learned, they used to go kidnap a Brahman. And they said, we only have 3 days. Teach us what is written in the Granth, in the Guru Granth Sahib. So this was the level of commitment to understand the Sikh ideas, the Sikh worldview, the Sikh paradigm. And Sikhs were doing it. They were leading. Now, what was Pai Mani Singh? You guys all know the Sakhis. It's basically state is coming up with, yesterday was Halloween, and I was saying for Sikhs, there were only tricks, there was no treat. It's all tricks. And tricks are, how do we keep you talking about nonsense or noise so you don't talk about the real issue? Same thing in 18th century. Baba Deep Singh is trying to assemble people. Pai Mani Singh is assembling people. So they figure out clever ways of doing things. Create a tax. The issue was what? Access to Darbar Sahib. Issue was Sikhs should not get together and should not have what in America we call right to assemble freely. The First Amendment rights we call them here. Issues are same. Again, martyrdom occurred, turnout was low for whatever reason. You can see why Sikhs also don't show up to certain things, because turnouts have always been low. But what happens even in that period? What happens is the attitude of defiance stayed. Bota Singh, Garja Singh, the Gurdware jarur jaya karo je kite Punjab mein jaane. When I started taking students there, that was one of the stops I made. If you don't make that stop, if you just do Matha Teka Darbar Sahib, I can tell you, you will never understand defiance. What is Bota Singh and Garja Singh's act? It is saying, state is saying we have finished every Sikh, but we are here to collect tax from the state. That's the attitude. And this kind of attitude existed in the 18th century. And the reputation was that we will basically, you guys have heard this, the point is, they didn't have too much stuff. They weren't as comfortable as we have become today. And maybe what we need to look at is there is a state issue and there's an internal issue that we are too comfortable actually. And that's why people like me, I'll download myself. Maybe that's why I don't want to talk about the real stuff, because then I have to give up my comfort. And that is very different than 18th century Sikhs. So let's come to do baar kallu kara hoya. Sikhan the term is kallu kara. 84, whatever term you use, other than the riots, we should talk about genocides, we could call it Katle-aam kaho, but my preference is kallu kara, and the reason is kallu kara includes everyone. It includes people who are bystanders, it includes people who are fighting, as warriors, it includes people who are helping, sometimes we forget, historically, when we talk about Paitaru Singh, for example, what was his role? He was a sympathizer. He wasn't an activist in that sense. What was his role? He was providing food to those who were fighting. Even he was declared enemy of the state and he was scalped alive, right? That's what happens. This is the cost. And this is what happened back then. And then missiles created response. We know historically there were 12. We know only 11 of them created good response. And this is instructive because when we talk about 84, every Sikh is not going to respond. There will be some who will side with the governments. Now, for example, the Patiala wali missile CB only side karti si Sikhana. Not every missile fought at the forefront. Some became expansionist, but some were fighting to establish Sikh rights as well. So there is always distribution of people, but there were responses. And out of those responses, whenever you're going to give responses, Vada Kallu Kara happened. Half of the Sikh population was killed in one day. Now, what was the response? This is Ratan Singh Pangu writing that when this is going on, resilience is the word in English, and I want to talk about that a little bit more here. They kept at it. That's what that means. They kept at it. ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਬਿਕੋਜ਼ 84 ਬਾਰੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਬੜਾ ਕੁਝ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੰਨੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਮਾਰਦੇ ਰੀਅਲੀ ਆਈ ਮੀਨ ਇਫ ਆਈ ਨੋ ਮਾਰੇ ਨੇ ਡੋਂਟ ਮਿਸ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਮੀ 3000 ਦਿੱਲੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ 10000 ਦਿੱਲੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਨੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਵਿੱਚ 1.5-2 ਲੱਖ ਆ today it's 30 million we are talking that resilience was maintained defiance was maintained even when they killed 50% of us so something is not sitting right when we talk about 84 and what is that and I want to talk about this Panthic unity business because I have personally attended several seminars and everyone talks about unity, Handy. Here is a criteria of unity in that time. He says the way we know who is actually unified is not by the ones who give the right lectures. Because we all like to put up a show that we are together. No. People are together, those who are at the forefront. And one of their criteria is they sit together and are able to have a good meal. Langar sada eh hunda si ki kam karan to pehla ikkathe beh lo. We know we are not able to sit still these days. Or in last 30 years, some of us weren't. There were others who did it. So idea of even Panthic unity in the gravest of the time, when 50% of the population is being killed, one of the criteria was, are you able to sit together and have a good meal together? This is one of the ways we looked at what unity was. There are other ways, and they are mentioned there. Now, when you are in that kind of a period, you need revival. And I'm using history and I'll come to 84 very quickly. Back then, they also dealt with the same things. They figured out how to revive the community. And when I say they, it's very few. It's not common Sikh at the time was actually very good. But even then, every Sikh is not able to do everything, right? But even the ones who provided food to the militants of the time, like Bhai Taru Singh, we commemorate them at the highest levels. So this is another way to look at it. कि ऐसी किस level पे लोगों की लोड़ है? ते ओदे विच you will notice that Abdali continues his strikes. This is what we'll say in 84. Indian government continued its operations. It wasn't just a one operation, Operation Blue Star. You know there was several. In fact, in November 84, one of the code names which has been suggested by the retired Indian Army intelligence officers was a pre-planned operation named Operation Shanti. This is why they were able to kill so many Sikhs. Anyway, coming back to it, there are several operations. Just like Abdali has 6 or 7 campaigns in 18th century to kill Sikhs. Because campaign continues until they feel they have defeated you or until you feel you are defeated. That's what states do. 80s which bhi idda ho raha. 84 June is one campaign and there's a campaign in July, Operation Woodrose of the Galhundiya. Several operations are there. Campaigns continued. In fact, they continued post 84. They continued till 91 probably, or 93, depending on how you look at the whole scenario. My point is, history which bhi idda hi hoya. Campaigns continued, but there are always people who responded. Okay. Now, but what did the response produce? And I want to talk about that. In 3 months, after Vadaga Nukara, when they have killed 50% of Sikh population, they captured Sarhand. In 3 months. That's planning. That's resourcefulness. This is, you know how we say, what are the milestones or what are the deliverables today? This is the delivery of the Sikhs. Very few in number. State is after them. Campaign is continuing. Even then, capturing Sarhand meant, Sarhand da jo literal meaning will na, it means this is the border. The idea was you capture Lahore, you rule until Sarhand, you capture Delhi, then you rule Sarhand onwards the rest of India. So Sikhs were able, they were going toward Lahore. And they're like, to capture Lahore, to capture Amritsar, this is what you're going to capture first. Because that's how things were done back then. And this is what they did. And they eventually, 9 months after that, defeated Abdali, who we now, some historians call Durrani. So justice de which is tarah the ideas we on and there is a hard delivery of these things. And eventually, you know, they also captured Delhi at different times. Sardar Baghel Singh Rathale. Now, this is how you showed your defiance, your resistance, and your ability to rule, which is another thing which is mentioned in Guru Granth Sahib. We don't talk much about it, but when Guru Nanak is evoked by Patta de Savaiye, he is evoked as being somebody Raj Jog. दोनों ही माने ने मानना होता enjoy करना. Raj is literally about governance, how you rule economic and political policies, and Jog is about your relationship with the divine. कि ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਕਨੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਬਣਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਰੱਬ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਇੰਜੋਏ ਕੀਤੇ ਨੇ ਨਿਰੰਤਰ ਇਨਫੈਕਟ the word uses ਨਿਰੰਤਰ is continuously even when he's jail he's enjoying that so nirantar is without breaking the flow right so it's not a transient thing it's not something which happened for few moments or few days ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪੂਰੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀਤਾ ਆਪਣੇ and by deduction ਤੇ corollary ਸਾਰੇ ਗੁਰੂਆਂ ਨੇ enjoy ਕੀਤਾ so ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ 18th century ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਨੇ and eventually you know Sikh empire ਬਣਿਆ the reason I am talking about Sikh empire here is Ranjit Singh just didn't happen Ranjit Singh ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਬੇ ਦਾ ਬਾਬਾ ਚੜ੍ਹਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਕੀ ਕੰਮ ਸੀ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਦੇਖਣਾ ਪਊ and he was in the campaigns I was just talking about so Ranjit Singh didn't just happen Sikh empire didn't just come about Sikh empire was a natural byproduct of fighting the state which refuses your existence. That's what it was. Every state, Abdali was saying, we're going to demolish you. Khatam kar dena tada, ek banda bhi nahi rakhna. And Sikhs kept fighting it, fighting. He's like, enough is enough. Eventually, if you look at from 1740s, Chota ka Lukara to Badda ka Lukara in 1760s, then they're like, we're going to fight each campaign. Eventually, we have our own state. Whatever that state had become, that's not a discussion here. That's a natural byproduct of when any state, whether it's imperial or democratic, state is a state, the system changes there. Eventually people will say enough. If you can't even admit that I can exist, if you forget about treating me equally, remember justice actually required you to treat people equally. So they're like, forget equal treatment, you don't even want me to exist. Then we will continue our campaigns. And this is how the Sikh empire came about. Let's go to what Sikh empire did. And the next 20 minutes I want to spend on 84 then. People talk about empires and their shortcomings. I also do that. But I want to celebrate what they were able to accomplish as well. Religious freedom, at the level of even discomforting Sikhs, Ranjit Singh practiced that. Allowing Hindus and Muslims to become better partners in his administration. No capital punishment. And it was very inclusive. People these days create noises for us. Will we be inclusive if we run our own affairs? Well, look at the history. The state which is not treating us equally, look at their history. They never treated people equally. But our history is when we were in charge of governance, we actually did. We actually upsetted the Sikhs that we treated people so equally. So my point is, when we are being asked and told that Sikhs are not able to do justice, our history speaks very loud. Yes, we were able to do it very clearly. And then let's come to 84. 47 to 84, there's a lot of stuff going on. Just like Ranjit Singh didn't happen, 84 didn't happen, Badda ka Lukara didn't just happen. There were a lot of campaigns. And campaigns are this nature. You can see it on the screen if they're visible to you. But essentially what this is showing is from 1947, 15 August 1947, the day India was given Transfer of Power Act. And you can listen to and read about it, that how it was never really independence, but that's besides the point. From that day onwards till June of 84, Sikhs have a history of fighting the state in peaceful way. And the peaceful way is important here because our peace is very different than Gandhinian peace. Guru Gobind Singh's just war theory is, we will try everything. You can torture us, and they lived. Gurus did this, Sikhs did this. You can torture us, you can try your power. We will try all those things, but at some point, we're going to come back and do an ardas, and we will fight back. And that's 47 through 84. We're trying everything. We've tried different, 500,000 people in jails to recognize Punjabi Suba. How can anyone say we are not peaceful? That's called civil disobedience. Lakh, 4 lakh banda da Delhi vich ek baar phadkana da jail ch pata si. And then you have the Indian Army's issues on how discrimination starts against Sikhs. There is a nationalization of banks. There is a riparian issues. Point is, 47 to 84, there is a non-militant campaign by Sikhs to fight with the government. Hey, we died for freeing India. We are the ones who did it. Don't tell us. In fact, Gandhi used to say this. He says, if we ever break promises, then Sikhs know how to use their kirpan. He's on the record saying that, writing an editorial in Young India. So when we used it, why are they telling us we are doing the wrong thing? because we tried it from 47 to 84. And then 84 happened. What is 84 about? Well, they're about these kind of things. Riparian issues, ਪਾਣੀ ਦੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੋਰਲੀ ਤਾਂ ਬੈਂਕਰਪਟ ਕਰ ਹੀ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ from water they are bankrupted. Columbia Institute is saying that Punjab will be desert by 2020. 80% of the water is below the dangerous levels in Punjab. Linguistic recognition, 16 years of non-violent movement to recognize the only state in India to get statehood after 16 years is Punjab. There are some serious issues there. State autonomy, emergency is another one, which we forget about. Remember, the rulers don't like being questioned. And Sikhs as a political party questioned what Indira Gandhi when she declared emergency. In fact, you probably have seen pictures now on the internet floating in last year or so, how the very BJP government's leaders are in turban and beards and taking refuge in Darbar Sahib. Again, this speaks to our level of justice. We believe that jehda sharan aa jave ਉਹਨੂੰ ਬਚਾਉਣਾ, right? And ਅਸੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਵੀ ਹੈ, ਸਾਡੀ history ਦਾ ਇਹ ਹੈ. During this emergency, the Jansangis, they were called at the time, they took refuge in Darbar Sahib. So we are able to do justice even to the ones who are running today's government and corrupting our institutions like Akal Takht. But because they came, they needed help, we also helped them. And it's, those things are available to us in a documented proof way as well. But we did protest against emergency as a political party, and we had to pay for it. And that's probably one of the reasons 84 happened. But let me give you some parallels from 18th century to 20th century. Because when we history ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਨਾ, ਫਿਰ ਥੋੜਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਹਜਮ ਕਰ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੂੰ. ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਸਿੱਧੀ 20th century ਦੀ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹੋਗੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਜੀ violence ਨੂੰ justify ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ. No. When you have raw violence, when you have a state which is violent, we are of Guru Gobind Singh's and Guru Nanak's. Guru Granth Sahib ਵਿੱਚ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਤੱਕ ਆ ਗਿਆ. The Guru, we believe in that. Us, we believe in that Guru who gave us Gyan Khadag, the wisdom and the sword. So why are we afraid to talk about this? When there is a state which is unjust, just like in 18th century, they banned access to Darbar Sahib. In 84, they did the same thing. There were no political right. In 20th century, we were treated second-class citizens. Prices on Sikh head, same thing happened. Impunity continued in 20th century in post-84. Historians at the time were writing whatever they need to write. Even today, on 84, that's exactly what was going on. You know, what in Doordarshan said, how can you expect them to say the right thing if they're state-owned? In fact, it's very instructive. I just went through a one-page article of the director of Doordarshan. And he's explaining why they did not declare the death of Mrs. Gandhi until 6 p.m. And he's talking about anyone he would ask, they would say, we are not ready to say it, because they didn't know who to make the prime minister. There were some protocol, other issues. My point is, if it is that level of bureaucracy, how will they ever say the right thing? He's talking about, he has the home minister, he has Zail Singh's entourage, he has Rajiv Gandhi's entourage. Point is, he was not able to declare it, and BBC and Pakistan Radio had said it already. So that kind of a bureaucracy, if there is that level of control, how can you expect they will say anything about Sikhs at all? And judiciary, ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ Sharia law ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ Indian laws ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ. Judiciary is not doing anything. Supreme Court has already said, you look at Khalada's cases, for example, they already admitted that 25,000 people have been killed extrajudicially. And then they told them, they referred the case to National Human Rights Commission, and they've been sitting on it for the last 10 years. Khaladi the conviction, no, 6 police officers, 10 saal ho gaye ne almost, right? Nothing is being done. 84 which bhi idda da chal raha hai. Supreme Court and this week, 30 years later, this is why we have to change the way we talk about insaf hai ki the justice here. This week, the judge for the 4th time is not placed on the bench where Fulka was appearing. 30 years later, judge nahi bitha rahe, because case hi na chale aage. So again, I think our scenario, our sort of narrative has been changed as to what insaf is. I want to come back to that. Now, when 18th century it happened, same thing happened in 20th century. So let's change the narrative. So there are people who said, you know what? You do what you need to do, but we have our own tradition to do it. And they said, let them come. Aandeo is in Punjabi, they're saying it. Gurbaksh Singh Nihan said the same thing. He says, Panth has decided this, but I want to stay back and fight Abdali. Now in 84, actually it's the Panth deciding at the Ramyud Morcha Zardas, and the rest of them left. and Pindrawala and his men stayed. So we need to understand our narrative. Dharam Yudh Morche di Aadhar mein sare shamal sige. Ajay Gurbaksh Singh wala jehda scenario uthe Panth ne faisla kita, we're not going to fight today, but even then he requests the Panth and Panth says, okay, 30 of you can stay back and fight at Thali. Here actually political affiliation of the Sikh parties decided we will stay. So what more endorsement do you need? Why are we even entertaining the government's questions? Why was Pindrawala there? Why were weapons there? These are the noises, we call it. This is the collective decision of the Sikh political establishment of the time. And man in charge, we might call him our CEO or Jathedar, he's merely implementing them. He's not deciding anything on his own. In fact, he is so good, even when his people who were in Ardas left, he did it. And that's something we need to really understand and start not just defending, but locate it in our psyche. He is doing the right thing. Now, 18th century, so justice the ideas di gal kar rahe hain na, appa kehne 30 saalon ka insaf nahi milaya. I'm saying really, I think there are people who did some good stuff. They did what they needed to do. Good, bad, ugly is a political scenario, but there are things which happen. 18th century, jab Masse Rangar da Singh vadya haiga, Sukha Singh Mehtab Singh, for state, and they're also diasporic. They're not all Punjabi. One is Rajasthani as well as village. It's very interesting how things work. So there is, although one of them happened to be from a village near Amritsar at the time, but they heard the news in Rajasthan. And they asked, nobody is doing anything? That's 18th century. Well, we have the same thing when Beyan Singh, Satwant Singh do this, or when Sukha Jinda do this, we are afraid to present their case. We have to present it. You know that book, Who Are the Guilty? The number 4th name written there, this is what Sukha Jinda and Sukhi or Kuki did. They did do things. They looked at the state is already failing. They looked at their tradition. जिन्होंने response दिता ना, असी क्योंकि उन्हां दी गल नहीं कर रहे हैं, we keep saying कि सानू इंसाफ चाहिदा. State never does this. In Canada, they still haven't apologized about Komagata Maru. इतने तक कोई नहीं कुछ कह रहा उन्हां. But Sikhs responded there. This is the 100th anniversary of that. I'm bringing that in because if there was no Captain Meva Singh, there would have been no mention of Komagata Maru. Inne ships उन्होंने भेजते सी immigration दे थल्ले ना थल्ले discrimination थल्ले. No, we don't know about any other ship. But Sikhs know, the world knows, there's an exhibition going on because a Sikh responded to it, and his name is Captain Meva Singh, and they're not talking about him, but he's the reason we are having 100th anniversary of Komagata Maru. Similarly, Sukha Singh, Mehtab Singh, if they weren't there, we wouldn't know what are narrated. If Sukha Jinda didn't do what, General Vaidya is the player at that time, Indira Gandhi is the player. Back then we have Zakaria Khan, Lakhpat Rai, Jaspat Rai, Harpagat Niranjaniya. Now we have these. Vaidya, Indira Gandhi, Sajjan Kumar, Titler, Bhagat, Arjun Das. We're not going to say everything has to happen. And I know it's tough to talk about it, but this is our history. Everything doesn't happen, but things did happen. So people who responded, and when Sukha Jinda talk about it in their own words, we know more about the Indian state, what it says about them. Remember we talked about, we look at the state's narrative, we're not looking at it. When Sukha Jinda themselves talk about it, they're very clear. They say, we are not doing this out of vengeance or revenge. He's saying we are invoking, people who are doing this worldwide. And he invokes they invoke Nelson Mandela. They invoke Che Guevara. And then they say, in our case, it's Pindrawala. And here is a differentiation. He says, we answer, we had a leader too, like the Che Guevara and like Nelson Mandela. And his name is Pindrawala. The difference is, but Pindrawala's inspiration is not born out of any political ideology of this world. His inspiration was born out of Guru Gobind Singh. So look at how they are explaining it. This is what we need to do. There is a reason no militant does this, and I'm just mentioning this as a fact. We have this available. Even when all this happens, Kuki is able to go after the assassination, have a conversation with his daughter, the one he assassinated. So ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਨਾ ਬੜੀਆਂ ਜ਼ਬਰਦਸਤ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ available ਨੇ which are saying that this is not a personal vengeance. Otherwise, ਇਹੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਾਂ ਬੰਦਾ ਗੱਲ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਪਾਉਂਦਾ. But they had a meeting and they talked about it. Why, what happened? There are some legal implications, they can't get into that. But my point is, this is what has happened in the last 30 years with us, and we have people who have done these things. So, what is our really narrative? Yeah, one of the things should be very clear. The issue is every Sikh needs to learn how to respond. And when I say every Sikh, last week I was interviewing in UK and he kept saying, who are these we Sikhs you keep talking about? I say, we are the ones who are learning from Gurbani. This is not about all Sikhs. We don't talk about all Sikhs when we do Ardas. It should be very clear to all of us. Right? In Ardas, do we say those who funded it, those who tried it, those who worked with the state? There is no qualification. The only qualification is they tried their best and they paid for it. That's the history. So similarly, when we are responding, it comes down to our character. And I really can't emphasize this enough. Ardas which a phrase used on the Bird ki patch. Honor is of the character. We ask Vaheguru, protect our character. Maybe there's a reason we ask for it. We have forgotten our character. We have forgotten our DNA. Now, we act like any other community in the world. And we talk like them. And we have their ideas of justice. Don't misunderstand me. Vigil is not the way we do things. Vigil, we should join them. I used to join them. In high school, I remember Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the Shawnee mission mein hunda si, utthe lake te jaake Shawnee lake te we would join them. But when we are commemorating our event, we need to figure out how we do it. And then we'll talk about that a little later. But my point is, we need to know what is our DNA. What was your forefathers and foremothers' DNA? How did they respond to it when they joined Sikh revolution? They worked on economic and political policies, not even religious stuff. आज ਅਸੀਂ ਲੜਦੇ religious ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ 'ਚ ਹੀ ਲੜੀ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਨਾ, you know, ਕਿ ਦਸਮ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਦੇ issues ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ. Their focus was this: they lived Sikhi, and part of living Sikhi is they were sovereign. It didn't matter who paid their bills, which means where they worked. We have history available to us, at least anecdotally, that even when Sikhs were working for Ranjit Singh, when an order came from Akal Takht, and Chathedar was clean, they followed Akal Takht's order, they didn't follow Ranjit Singh's. And we know one day he got up from one of his harems and he came out and no Sikh soldier would salute him, even his own bodyguard. So it was that level of allegiance to the Guru. Today, this is where the panga is. Our character is missing. Character is not just sexuality. Character is about what is the metal you are made of. Character is about, in Gurbani, when you're invoking Ikko Onkar, are you working to become Ikko Onkar? Second is, as a community, we always looked at, जिन्हों से सरबत दे भले दे बहुत जोर ला रहे हैं ना, but पंथ की जीत असी भूल गए. Sikhs as Commonwealth. Panth ki jeet comes about 2/3 of the way in Ardas. Sarbat da Bala comes at the end. Our character was become a strong institution, strong Sikh institution. Only then you can be a good benefactor. Otherwise, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ manufacturing ਵਾਲਾ ਗੱਲ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਰ ਰਲ ਜਾਂਦਾ. And third thing is, as a community, we should be ready to do our own relief work and our own defense mechanisms. So ਸਾਡਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਕੀ ਹੈ in post 84? We have done nothing properly. Only the responders did things properly. So the ones who deserve the most credit, we don't even talk about them. The ones where we failed, we keep asking government for those things. Let's think about that. ਸਾਡਾ narrative ਸਿਰਫ ਇਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ change ਹੋਇਆ ਕਿ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਮਾਰਿਆ. ਜਿਹੜੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪ ਕਰਦੇ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਸਾਰਾ change ਕਰਤਾ. ਸੋ ਨਿਆਂ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਪਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ. ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੋਂ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਲੈ ਲਾਂਗੇ? ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਣਾ. So justice needs to be first with yourself. And my point essentially here is, as a community, our best thing we have been able to do are the ones who actually continued the tradition of Sukha Singh Mehtab Singh. Everyone else actually failed. We didn't set up our own relief. We didn't take care of our own children. We didn't take care of our own women. We didn't take care of our, in fact, since then state understood the only people who responded, state has been working to what we will today call completely make them dysfunctional. Because they're the only ones who responded. And look at what happened post-84. The whole fight till from there to now, that only successful people, they have been completely, in our minds, have been made terrorists, or they have been caught up in so many messes. Sometimes they're in jail, sometimes they're out of jails, their families, you know, it's just created a mess to make sure even those guys don't come up again. Right? So this whole relief work, rehabilitation work, how to do a legal work, all that is continuing, but none of it is successful because we are confused. Thing which was successful, that has been completely demolished. And actually, I would say systematically, by playing with Sikh psyche and by playing with the Indian psyche, they have been completely dismantled. To large part, they have been dismantled because they were so successful. Okay, so what do we really need to do? Well, this struggle will continue. And this is the history. Every 30 years, we have similar struggles. Our ideas of justice need to be on top. It should be very clear there is only one goal in SikhRI, and that goal is to deliver justice. Our goal is not to get up at 3:30 a.m. That might be your personal goal. That has never been the collective goal. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਮਰਜ਼ੀ ਵਜੇ ਉੱਠੋ, ਜਿੰਨੇ ਮਰਜ਼ੀ ਵਜੇ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ ਪਾਠ ਕਰੋ, ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਰਜ਼ੀ ਹੈ. But we do all those things. So when we are in public life, when we are in community living, we are able to deliver justice. And that's our history. Guru Nanak in public life is how he responds to Babar, how he talks with Rai Bular, how he talks to the intellectuals of the time with Siddh Ghost when we talk about it. That's his public life. In his private life, he's showing us how he deals with his children, his wife, his parents. All of that is going on. So our public life has always been about, are we able to do justice? I would say we actually came a long way again in 84. If certain people didn't do what they did, we would have had a very bad history. After 84, it would have changed. And the reason we are continuing to talk about it is because they actually succeeded. What Pindrawale did, from 84 through mid-90s, there were people who succeeded in doing things. In fact, those very people are the reasons now it has become fashionable to talk about 84. It wasn't even 2 years ago. Now people are talking about it because those guys did things. I'm saying the government won't recognize this, keep that in mind. So our idea of justice has been, we have been on. Element of community which has been focused on responding, they have been there. Others are responding, but we are not succeeding because we should know state is not going to do it. I'm basically saying, don't say we haven't gotten justice. The ones you are seeking from, they never said they will give you. The ones who were seeking from Vaheguru, they have already done it. And this is, by the way, Guru Nanak as well. Let me contextualize it in Gurbani. In, those Babarwani Shabads we do, the idea of justice Guru Nanak brings up right away. He says, I wouldn't even talk about this if there were two equal sides fighting, right? You know the Shabads. What does he say? He says, I don't understand this. Je sakta sakte ko mari taman ros na hoy. But he says, I'm not going to go to Babar and have this conversation because he's not ready to have this conversation. I'm having this conversation with you because I have a relationship with you. And you here is Vaheguru. So the state who is not ready to have conversation, why are you barking up the wrong tree is the question here. State is not ready for that conversation. State is not acknowledging that. But if I have a powerful relationship with Ikuwankar, I need to have that conversation there. That's what every Sikh has done. People who respond, that's what they do. Then they document what they have done. So coming back to a little bit on the ideas of justice and politics. What is our politics? This is Professor Puran Singh writing. Again, our writers, our poets even know this. And maybe there's a problem with our poets today. There are one or two who might write like this. But even Puran Singh, when he's saying what is the politics of the Guru, he's very clear. He says politics of the Guru is fighting against all tyranny, subjugation of man to man, wrong taxation and tyranny, economic and political issues. साड़ी आज भी यही लड़ाई है जिथे भी ਅਸੀਂ बैठे हैं साड़ी लड़ाई है our poets are this our granthis used to be so clear I mentioned this in some other place I want to mention it here you look at the shabads what are being sung again now it's acceptable so people are doing it but even 100 years ago when we were facing this kind of a stuff Bhai Avtar Singh's grandfather was Bhai Jwala Singh. He used to sit in the protest and they used to arrest him. And he was the best Kirtaniya of the time. You know the most popular Kirtaniya, what they do today. So Sada musician, he was again connected with the divine. And Jwala Singh used to go sit Jato Ka Morcha, where he was arrested. Because he is ready to do Kirtan, not just in Gurdwara, but where it's needed. We really need to be doing other things. Akhand part is the time to learn. That's development. Akhand part is not a response. There is no Akhand part when people are being raped or plundered and there's an arson going on. That's the time to respond. Akhand part is just like in 18th century. When you know you have a couple of days, do Akhand part. This is to grow you. This is to connect you with the divine. So when you do have to respond, you're able to give a proper response. So our ideas of justice have always been about, the politics of the Guru has always been about fighting tyranny, fighting wrong tax. Us wele jazia hunda si. Guru Nanak Sahab's Salok and Asa ki war, if you've been to Sultanpur Lodi, if you go across the river, I don't know how many of you have gone, apne nyaaniyan nu ehji thawa le aaya karo, this is what I believe in, this is what makes things real. And there is still a broken tower where they used to collect tax to cross the river. Ajkal ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ cross the river ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਦੋ ਛੋਟੀ ਜੀਆਂ boats ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ, but you can see remnants of that, and Guru Nanak is invoking that. That's Asa ki war. Our Kirtan, our Bani is political. How can we not be political? Where Guru Nanak says, I refuse to pay this tax. Gau Brahman ko kar lava gobar taran na jai. Kar is a tax. And he's writing this because he's seeing it, how there is unfair taxation going on. This is the kind of stuff which SikhRI is involving. So what is a just world? Before I finish and take some questions. You know, it should be very clear, this Shabad gets invoked, but this is our vision. Our vision is that the reason our vision is of a place where there is a dignity and respect. Simply put. If there is no dignity and respect, that's not the place we want to establish. And we have always been, ki Rabb ne sanu kis tarah di jagah, Halimi Raj hai ki. Halimi Raj is governance. Raj is about how do you treat your economic and political policies. Like in this country, we are facing this. You know, there are so many places in America now passing bills so the poor won't have the right to vote. These are the clever ways state deals with you when they don't want to share the power. Back then, it was the same thing. They figured out clever ways to assassinate Guru Arjan and Guru Tegh Bahadur. They figured out a legal way to do it through Sharia laws. They figured out a clever way to deal with the Sikh economics when they nationalized Punjab and Sindh. They figured out clever ways to deal with how to reduce Sikhs in the Indian Army by passing the Defense Act of 1971. But even when that is going on, the best the Sikhs have produced, like Sardar Kapoor Singh, when they write and draft Anandpur Sahib resolution, maybe I think there are 2 or 3 religious demands. Rest of the demands are how we need to take care of India by making it a federal structure. And this is the Nyaya. This is the justice. You can kill us, we will kill you back, but at the same time, the policies we are adopting is something which is good for all, and that's the Halimi Raj. How do you maintain dignity and respect for everyone? This is what Sukha Jinda in their letter are invoking. This is exactly what they write. And when they write that openly to the President of India, they're not hiding. They're like, these are our reasons to do it, because the state is failing, state has become very violent, and state is actually not fulfilling its own constitutional responsibility. So people like me, us, what they are describing, have to go and fight the state because state has become so corrupt. This is their own words, written in English and Punjabi. So the idea of just world and justice, I end with this last slide, which essentially is, it's a long Shabads Hagene, but I want to focus on the last 2 slides. So we have our own belief system of Nyaya. And our belief system is anytime somebody is going to create raw violence against disenfranchised people, people who can take care of themselves, it's our job on behalf of Ikwankar to go take care of them. This is Guru Granth Sahib. So, जैसे मत्था टेकना गुरु ग्रंथ साहब ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਮੰਨਣਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਗਰੀਬਾਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਜੇ ਖਿੰਜੇ ਦਾੜੀ ਪਾਰ ਬ੍ਰਹਮ ਸਾਗਰ ਮੈਂ ਸਾੜੀ. I mean, you have to look at the interpretation, but what it's saying is, who is a garib? Garib is a destitute, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਆਪਣੇ ਰਾਈਟ ਆਪ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ. ਜਿਵੇਂ 18th century ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, when people are picking women from Bombay to central India and nobody is protecting their rights, then Sikhs go and protect their rights. When nobody is doing this in 80s, then Sikhs go and fight for their own rights. This is why Panth ki jeet is, when you are strong yourself, then you can fight for everyone's behalf. When if you yourself are not strong, you can fight on their behalf. And the second 2 line are बहुत important ne, pura न्याय करे करतार, अपने दास को राखन हार. So the Vaheguru we believe in administers complete justice. Now this last point I want to spend a couple of minutes on. One is, Vaheguru is not a person for us. Ikwankar is not a person. Ikwankar is an idea. Ikwankar is a quality, attribute, behavior, character. So if this character is not within us, that I must be an active agent of justice, you will never know what justice is. Even as an idea, the noun part we will not know, which is where I started. And the noun part is ability to treat equally. And the verb part of that is that you will figure out how to do corrective measures, corrective actions. Punjabi, the word is sodhana. I know we invoke that allegorically sometimes and sometimes when it is militant, but sodhana literally means to be corrected. You know, like it's like when we have those theorems when you are trying to do. The theorem exists. The idea of justice exists for Sikh. But when we are able to correct it, correct a wrongdoing, this is where if you look at, this morning, Shauna Jolly wrote and I'm invoking her because she is right now she's probably top 10 international human rights lawyers in the world. She wrote this whole piece about how even the very words we use about 84 have to be changed. Because she works with Indian people, she works with people in Havana, and she's working with people in The Hague. And she's basically saying there cannot be any justice because you don't even know what you're asking for. Your own vocabulary is not even clear. This is where we need to. So that's one level. I'm asking us to go to a different level. And that level is SikhRI level. In SikhRI level, justice cannot be understood unless you have your relationship with Ikko-Onkar. And as you develop your relationship with Ikko-Onkar, you will not only know how to have a treatment of justice, you actually will become the ones who corrects it, which means you'll be an active agent. And by the way, when Guru Granth Sahib talks about it, we don't say we are seeking justice from other people. We have never asked that from the state. That's our history. I know it's tough to say that, and I know it's tough to digest, but never in our history we have asked state to have a mercy on us. But now something has changed in the last 30 years. Again, it has been changed deliberately, is what I'm saying, because the people who responded succeeded. And we didn't want to see that success anymore. The government got scared of it. Sikh communities got scared of it. So we said, Apana government to insaf mangi. The one who is persecuting you, let's ask. Guru Nanak never did that. So we had to stop saying we want justice. In Guru Granth Sahib, it says, those who believe in Guru Amar Das Sahib, one of the things they are capable of doing, te nar pat jadav da ek savaiya haga, uthe har line te nar to shuru hundi, I'm going to end it with that. And it says, who is Guru Amar Das Patsha happy with? You know, the words I invoke are, he says, Suprasanna Pai. Suprasanna is very happy. And the line is te nar, and then the things which are written are those people who don't feel pain in this world. Those people who don't take gifts but are able to give gifts. Those people who are able to fight with an unjust state and capture power if need be. Te nar uthap bithappa is the line. Nobody sings this shabad. Avatar Singh did. I encourage you to go read those. World has its own way of looking at justice. I'm not saying to violate the countries we live in. We have to look at what those countries are asking you to do and us to do. But Sikhs also have their own idea of justice and their way to take justice. And we better pay attention to that if we want to be relevant to 84s. More 84s will come. Next one is coming. It's just a matter of time. It will happen even in America. You know, here we haven't taken the government to task. That's why we are hunky-dory here. The day you fight with the government, because government here is doing wrong stuff too. Look what they did to Julian Assange. If you were doing it, if we as a community were fighting for immigration right, there will be FBI in every Sikh's house, just watch. We are not working on economic and political rights in this country. We are right now working with the establishment. We want to act like the establishment. So we are okay. The day you start becoming like Guru Nanak Sikhs, even in this country, this state will take you to task too. So our fight has always been with the state, unjust state. State which does not have a fair taxation, state which does not treat people equally. There are second and third class citizens in this country as well. And there are communities who are fighting for that. So I'm saying 84s will come and go. We shouldn't be worried about the 30th anniversary, or 25th, or 100th. We should be more worried about the teenagers we have with us. People below the age of 25 who are sitting here, and as parents and community members, we need to pay attention to them. How are we going to bring in their character the same DNA which 18th century Sikhs had? How are we going to make sure that some of them become what Sukha Jindas were, and some of them become just one Singh Kanadas, and some of them become the lovely Kaurs, the only women Jatha which existed in 1920s or Kaljat? That's our work. Our Nyaya is something we take out of Guru Granth Sahib and we practice it in reality, regardless of whether it's a popular thing to do or not. And I'm saying, stop saying we didn't get it. The state never gives justice. We have to stop saying that. ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਇਨਸਾਫ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ, ਇਨਸਾਫ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੈਣਾ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਲਿਆ ਵੀ ਹੈਗਾ. Just like in 18th century, we have done it in 20th century. We have survived. Not only we have survived, we have thrived. Look at all of you and those of you who are watching. I think we have more money. I think we have more comforts. And state is not saying we have killed Sikhs anymore. So we have survived and thrived. The only thing is they have succeeded in changing our character. ਬਿਰਧ ਕੀ ਪਹਿਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਸਾਡਾ ਬਿਰਧ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਚੇਂਜ ਕਰਤਾ, which is much more dangerous. So we need to go back ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੇ ਪੈਜ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਮੰਗ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਲਿਆਵਾਂਗੇ ਬਿਰਧ. Let's revive our character, and part of that ਬਿਰਧ is ability to understand what justice is in Guru Granth Sahib according to the Sikh Gurus, and then becoming active agents of justice, whether you do it through Rawab or whether you do through Khanda. That's ultimately your individual choice. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. We have about 20 minutes for Q&A session. It is live as well, so if anyone has any question, please feel free to ask, and I'll repeat the question for the benefit of the people who are online. Any questions or comments on the ideas of justice as seen in Guru Granth Sahib, in our history, and in the context of 1984? Hanji.
Do you see us being able to keep the history of this 1984 Taluka as we had with the older Talukas? I know 30 years is example shows yes, but can we say 130 years from now, Sikhs will still remember?
Yeah. Sure. Jasjeet Singh just asked a question whether a few years from now, or 100 years, or 130 years from now, we will be able to do justice to those who responded in 84, including Pindramani and his men. Absolutely. I think it has already happened. And this is, again, the work of, I would say, of people who continue to talk about it for not last 5 years, but the first 25 years. If they didn't talk about it, the post-84 generation would have never known. And whether they are sitting in diaspora, sometimes we make that an issue. Whether they're in diaspora or in homeland, I think this is their success. That, you know, inspiration of people like A.R. Darshi came in, a retired bureaucrat of Punjab, cadre, that he's also writing a book like Gallant Defender. Again, a state will never write this. State never wrote that Akali Phula Singh was a good Jathedar. They called him a fanatic. J.D. Cunningham is a state guy writing a narrative on the Sikhs. But now we have a victory where a state guy, already 7 years ago, is writing a book on Pindramwale saying how he was a gallant defender. So we just need to pick and ask Sinha. He's asked this. The very general is asked, should Pindramwale would have stayed in 84 in Darbar Sahib complex? And his answer is beautiful. I think we should be quoting him, the guy who did the whole planning. And he said, you know, if somebody came to attack my house and I don't stand there to defend it, it's a statement on him, on me. In the case of Pindramwale, it was not just his personal house, it was the house of the Sikhs. You know, all power to him. He didn't use all power, he said salutation or something like to him. So the point is, we already have this, but because our own understanding is not clear, we end up not using these statements. We end up saying, "Ona ne aake ji ghera la ke inne hazar bande maarte." That's a fact. Why? Because Pindramwale and before that, people who became part of the Param Yudh Morcha, Ardas, and before that in 70s and 60s and 50s and 40s, it's the same thesis. Why it happens? Because we keep fighting every state, including the Sikh state, under Ranjit Singh, when they refuse to treat people with dignity and respect. So I think it has already happened, and those who have done it. And I want to mention one more thing here. We should not wait for even Sikh institutions to recognize them. This is the data in the past. People of Punjab already gave them credit in the elections in late 80s. It took Akal Takht and SGPC and the 15 years to recognize them. Because our institutions are run by people like you and me. We also don't have enough of the Sikh character. And they are, under certain conditions of the state. They exist in that state. Like this year, SGPC has been running, none of you probably know, they don't have an elected body this year. They have been running with the executive member committee, which is run by the Indian state. So they have their own issues. But I'm basically saying average Sikh in Punjab, not even in diaspora, already eulogized those who responded by voting their family members, their fathers, their wives, or their comrades, or their sympathizers into power. And it took SGPC and Akal Takht and its occupants a decade and a half before they did it. So I think people recognize it. More important thing is we have it, proper documentations of it, so we are able to do the narratives properly. And so it's not anecdotal anymore. It's properly documented. Great, thank you. Any other question or comment? Hanji.
How do we respond with Guru Nanak's message to the people that tell us let's forgive and forget?
Hanji. So, pehli gal ye message Guru Nanak da nahi hai. This is a phrase which we love to use because we have borrowed it from others. What is Guru Nanak's message in this case? Absolutely. The question is, how do you respond to people who say forgive and forget as Guru Nanak's message? Well, Guru Nanak's message is different. Guru Nanak's message is, let me invoke Japji Sahib. If we really listen to Japji Sahib, one of the first things we learn where he invokes the word Sunaya. Asa Sunaya di paudiyaan padhde hain na, ਉਹਦੇ ਚ ਇੱਕ line ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਬਹੁ ਨਾ ਸਕੈ ਕਾਲ. Those who listen, their fear of death departs. We are fearful people, right? Which means we are not listening. ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਨਜ਼ਾਰਾ ਮਿਲ ਜੂਗਾ ਉਹਦੀ ਦਰਗਾਹ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਜਪਜੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸੁਣ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ. So Guru Nanak's message really is not forgive and forget. Guru Nanak's message is definitely about forgiveness. And he says forgiveness must be practiced. In Guru Granth Sahib, it's very clear. Bhagat Kabir ji has that shabad. Jahan khema tahan aap. But Guru shows us when the forgiveness is practiced. Jahangir comes to Guru Har Gobind, takes responsibility for the political assassination of Guru Arjan, apologizes for it. Once there is a genuine apology, not the one which have asked once, former Prime Minister of India has done, and you can read the analysis by Jaskaran Kaur and Saab, how it wasn't an apology. Jahangir does blanket apology. Guru Har Gobind not only forgives him, because we believe where you practice forgiveness, there is divine, but there is a fake apology and there's a real apology. An apology, if you have ifs and buts, lekin word je use ho raha, but word je use ho raha, it's not an apology. That's what Manmohan Singh did as a Prime Minister. He used the word but in Punjab, militants did this. That's not an apology. When the Sikh practice is, whenever there is a blanket apology, we have always forgiven them, including Jahangir was forgiven by Guru Har Gobind. And not only forgiven, they became buddies. They even hunted together. They planted tree together in Kashmir, which was recently demolished, but that's a separate story. The point is, Guru Nanak's message is very clear. We will practice forgiveness. More importantly, we need to practice becoming like the divine. So we really understand what forgiveness is, rather than taken up by Guru Nanak Sahib ne word likha asa ki varsh aparadhi duna ne jo bhanta mirga. That people who just display humility, be very careful of them because they are bending down to kill you. That's his word, not mine. His statement in Asa ki var. So we have to learn what genuineness is. Khare te khote di pehchan karni bahut zaruri hai Gurbani mutabak. Khara khara sa vakhe koe, right? Kehne puri duniya kahi jandi hai ki khare ne genuine ne, but kehne khod naal bhare pae ne. So and the only way we will know this is if we invoke Ek Oankar in our own lives. And we must forgive, and we have forgiven. We have forgiven people in post-84 as well. We just don't talk about it. We have forgiven people who worked with the state, but they came to Sikhs and they apologized in whatever way they did at Akal Takht, they have been forgiven as well. So we actually do forgive. We never believe in forgetfulness. We believe everything is part of our memory tradition. Assi ta ardas vich roz invoke karte hain. How can we ask for forget? We say, no, we remember, but we remember with clear intentions. And the intention is, this is not about vengeance and hatred. This is about love and justice. Thanks for asking that. Any other questions on justice ideas? Hanji.
We all, in some form or fashion, have been affected by 84. That's probably all in our life.
Hanji.
18th century is not. History books, and if you have time to read, you will. our generation that you touched upon. See, you talk about character as well. Letting them know about the history is important. Character, letting them know about what is and how to be that divine is important. Is there such a thing as one more important than the other?
No. The question is, before I answer that, I mean, I have a categorical no on that. The question is, learning about character, learning about 84, especially for today's generation, what is more important? Which character is more important? Actually, this is the noise which has been thrown on us. Guru Nanak, when he's presented in Guru Granth Sahib, not the popular Guru Nanak, he is presented as being Jada Raj Jo Katha Man Raya. When Bhai Gurdas describes Guru Nanak, he says, Marya Sikha Jagat mein Nanak Nirmal Panth Chalaya. Sikha, Bhai Gurdas' interpretation, Kapoor Singh's interpretation, Sardar Jagjit Singh's interpretation, they all say it's a simultaneous being connected to the divine and being active in the community you are in. So no, one does not come before or after. That's the dichotomy. Advaitavad wal jaan di gall hai. Duchittapan create karna is what first? Should I do Simran more or should I do Seva more? Should I do Miri more or Piri more? This is where SGPCs also played a negative role by putting in their official publication. They did a title cover about 7 or 8 years ago where they wrote Piri, Phir Miri. You all know that's not the phrase. Phrase is Miri Piri. And invoked by Guru Nanak in Guru Granth Sahib, where he says, Jida kalla kalla haiga, koti hu peer varj raha hai, ja mir sunya ta aaya. He says those who are religious people, they run away when the political people attack. So he's saying simultaneously. In English, I use the word to describe it's a symbiotic relationship. Not only it happens simultaneously, one cannot happen without the other. One needs the other to exist. And that's the Sikh paradigm. The world doesn't get it. Most of us don't get it. I don't get it fully either. I'm trying very hard to get it because it is a different way to operate. That this is a simultaneous symbiotic relationship process, as I understand it. So अपने न्याणियां ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਭਰ ਕੇ ਦੇਣੀਆਂ ਪੈਣਗੀਆਂ. ਛੋਟੇ ਸਾਹਿਬਜ਼ਾਦਿਆਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਚੀਜ਼ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਈ ਸੀ, ਇਕੱਠੀਆਂ ਆਈਆਂ ਸੀ ਦੋਨੋਂ. So our work is how do we do the best possible way to get our kids to imbibe these values. And this is why we go to Ekko Onkar. Ekko Onkar is it's in oneness. This is why we need to really use the word Ekko Onkar much more. And we don't get it, so we start using other words. Punjabi, the popular word ho gaya Rabb. Sikha ne bhi adopt kar liya Vaheguru. I'm not against these words. I myself use them. But Guru Nanak invokes Ekko Onkar. This gives a lot of lessons that we got to bring everything towards the oneness, and we have to get rid of when we are getting caught up in dichotomies. What first? Everything together. Nothing first or second. And that's why he's able to say, we are not able to do. He says it and does it when he says, Nanak, Uttam Neech Na Koi. The reason we are not able to do it because we are still trying to figure out what first. He says everything is together. His Var also brings everything together, Asa Ki Var, which the world hasn't been able to do since then. ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਵਾਰਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਬਣਾਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਦੋ ਤਫਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਦਿਖਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ but Guru Nanak shows it's all about one. And because he's so connected and collected by invoking Ekko Onkar, by living Ekko Onkar, he's able to give responses which the world doesn't understand, but your forefathers and my foremothers definitely understood. So we can understand it. ਸਾਡੇ DNA ਦਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਬਣਾਉਣਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ. Thank you. We have maybe 5 more minutes. 1 or 2 more questions. And how about the teenager and the preteen table? You have any questions or comments? Nothing?
So I will ask a question on
Sure.
your behalf because I am sometimes considered a preteen by my own partner. So the question here is, you mentioned a lot today about the character and the bravery that's part of our psyche for a long time. How do we inculcate this bravery into our young Sikh men and women and get them ready for the next political war or personal or social war without it appearing to be something we're doing instigating violence? So bring that into today's
Sure.
paradigm for us because it's so relevant to what you mentioned.
Yeah. Excellent question. This is a how question. It'll be a tougher one to answer. This is a question on how do we inculcate the ideas of bravery and courage in today's youngsters without invoking that we are the violent ones. Okay, so there are a few ways to do it. We have to learn the system, but first let me talk about what the world is doing about it and how we can learn from today's world about it, and then I'll bring the SikhRI into it. You know, when Boy Scouts go learn, figure out how to deal with certain things, nobody questions it. When we send out at the camps, retreat sites, not just Sikh sites, I'm talking about what Americans practice, or when they go to summer camps, you know, they learn from bow and arrow, of today's bow and arrow, to hunting rifles as well. Nobody says anything about it. Does every American do it? No. But you know, I can guarantee you, those who have policemen and those who are in army, they do it. They have no issues with it, and they're not violent people. They'll have their own crazies, but who doesn't? Everyone has crazies out there. Now, so we need to do we need to take them to more outdoor things. We need to make them do some survival stuff. This is why I mentioned Boy Scout. We need to take them to some real camps as well, not in the 5-star huts, which are important. I don't mind those as well. But real camping will be, let them do some fishing as well. Let them figure out how to live if there is no shower. And that's something we have to talk about as well. So that's something world is doing, and our kids should do as well. Our camps have become very comfortable. Maybe we can have that a little bit, but we need to do some organized exercises. Like, you know, a lot of kids here today would love to do that too. What is that? Paintballing. What is all that? That gives you some practice of how do you operate in a tough world. So that's one thing. Second thing we can do is we should be singing the narratives. In America, they sing about all sorts of narratives too. There is no apology for what we do. But Sikhs have tough times singing our narratives, which are hard ones. Like we'll sing about Banda Singh Bahadur, but we'll have tough times singing that about Sukha Jidda, for example. I think it's getting easier. We should talk about it, we should read about it, and that's another thing we can do. Now, how do we bring SikhRI into it from Guru Granth Sahib's angle? I think that's where our biggest challenge is. I don't think we discuss with them our value system. And our value system, when we do discuss it, we end up making it very, let's say, sanitized, because we ourselves are not sure, even if we are clear, if this is we want our kids to be. Those who are clear, they're going to talk about it. And I think we really need to look at part ideas in Guru Granth Sahib as not just as part. I highly encourage, this is 84, Panj Shabad o Babar Wani di changi tarah sikha do, which is not about vengeance, it's all about how do you deal with atrocity. People are running bullying workshops, right? We need to figure out how to run our own style of bullying workshop, because that's what gurus did. They were not just dealing with a little bit of bullying, which is what happens in schools today, but that's a preparation. So teaching our youngsters, especially boys, how to stand up for people in their own homes, how to treat our women is very important part of it. I think that is dying, and we are having severe social fabric problems because of that. And do part selective shabads. We should all get very busy with what shabad we should be singing today. Why do we only sing Khurasan Khasmana Kiya Hindustan Daraya? There are some other shabads to be done. Aaj de din sada ye shabad wanda bhi banda haiga ki jehda asli sura kaun haiga. Now, I'll give one example of it. Darbar Sahib also doesn't do it. I can tell by the Ragi who was there. I remember staying in 5 years in India, and when Gurmeet Singh had the duty at Darbar Sahib, his shabads would tell us there is a historical day today. So the shabads we pick, you as a parent pick, we as a community pick, is very, very important. Churches do it, synagogues do it, they use relevant shabads. We just do, and the idea of peace also is very misguided. We need to tell in today's context, look what is happening in the world. Why do we have a UN peacekeeping force? Force is needed to counter the force. So again, at an age level, their activity level, their shabad level, these are different ways to do it. We are not violent people. We have to counter that thesis. To quote, because I am influenced by a little bit of political rap, Tupac used to say that America keeps saying we are the violent one. He says, no, America has a history of violence against blacks. We are just learning how to deal with it now. So we are not the violent ones. We have a history of violence against us. Indian state is the violent one. We are just learning to deal with how to deal with this violence in our own times. So we are not violent. We are peaceful, but with a real peace. And Guru Arjan Sahib, when he talks about peace, I want to remind everyone here, Sukhmani Sahib jide padh rahe hain, just remember how that peace comes, that you are ready to sit on Patitavi. So peace has some real cost. Real peace is very developed. It is not just sloganeering and going to a march or going to a peace march. It is something much more. It is countering policies of the state. And the cost is you should be ready to give up your own life. And that's what, and I think that preparation is what's lacking. So Sandu character revive jad karna, do it from Gurbani and look at their age group, what is the right activity which will give them the glimpse of being courageous. Being courageous is also like among this table again, I'll just look at you guys. You know, being courageous is not what you're going to do when somebody is getting hit. It's also, are you continuing to make fun of somebody when you know you're not supposed to? Because all your friends are doing it. If you stop that, you've just exercised courage because you went against the grain. We were taught to go against the grain. So it starts at home, what you will make fun of and what you won't. And I'm assure you, it'll become better in their life when they're married. And when the Panth needs them, they will be ready for it too. Otherwise, romanticized notion hai. It starts from day one, especially with the boys. We need to teach them and girls for sure, but boys on how they treat women. And that's the level I would keep it at. Anyone else? Okay, then thank you for joining us via the web and also in person here. Again, the idea of justice was we explored it through Guru Granth Sahib, and then through the institute we were presenting this through Glenrock Gurdwara as well today. Hopefully, we gave you a few things to think about. I'm not saying you go do something out today. This really is how you bring justice in your own life first. Please stop repeating the state's narrative. We have to learn to repeat the narratives of those who respond to the state. They did things, they succeeded. We need to figure out how to build on that success. That's our work. And to build on that success, please do study Guru Granth Sahib. Don't just read it. We used to study it. Those who respond invoke Guru Granth Sahib. And we better go study Guru Granth Sahib. 52 weeks, they pick 52 Shabads to learn as an idea. I'm sure 6-7 lines to sikh sakde hain ek hafte ch. It will change you. Because that's what happened to people who studied Shabad. Whether they directly did it or whether they indirectly heard the katha on it, they changed. Or they went to the institutions where these things were discussed, they changed. And that happened in 84 with Beyant Singh and Satwant Singh as well. That happened with Sukha Singh and Mehtab Singh. That happened with Banda Singh Bahadur. They all say Guru entered their life and their behavior changed. Ula Marag Jinai Bataya, Aisa Gur Vadbhagi Paya. Vadbhagi are those where the Guru enters their lives. Keep that in mind. It's not anything else which the Indian world or even the Punjabi world tells you. Vadbhagi are those when the Guru enters your life. Where the Guru enters, we learn what justice as an idea is and how ourselves to become active agents of justice. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. We'll stop this. We're going to take a lunch break here for half hour, then we'll start our next session.